were so totally and completely in love, exploring the wild mountainous coast of Southern Crete together, hyper-connected to the one truth in the universe. We stood on the highest point of land, on a mountain, on the crumbling rock walls of a Minoan palace, the ruins of an unprecedented civilization that existed for 1,000 years in peace, Pax Minoica. I'm standing on the rubble at the cliff's edge, looking out over the Libyan Sea, leaning against the strong breeze at such an angle I am flying. That deep peace, that deep love was so real. The vibe was so strong. It felt so much like love was the driving center of the universe that we, after 4 years together and no intention whatsoever of doing anything as bourgeois as getting married, spontaneously proposed to each other. We were overcome. Later that day, we walked the streets of Kutulufari, strolling past outdoor cafes and restaurants that seemed a little too crowded, a bit too animated for the middle of September. People were standing in a cluster outside a bar, peering in at a television, and I leaned in to get a better look and felt a completely dissociative moment. As I realized I was watching the skyline of New York City and the Twin Towers in smoke and flames, there was an irreconcilable emotional schism. Because of that time difference, this violent, full of hate event had occupied the same exact minutes of planet time with the peaceful experience so powerful I had known from the depth of my soul that the universe was love. So what the hell is that all about, right? What is knowing anyway? After that, the day that the United States dropped bombs on Iraq, I was physically ill. I vomited. I felt powerless to change anything. And then it came to me that like the sadhus, who choose to separate from the dominant culture, and like the Rastas, who choose to become cultural resistance, I could choose another way of knowing. I stopped combing my hair that day, and I started on my dreaded journey. My hair became grief locks, my war locks, my peace witness. This act of resistance became a daily and valued yoga for me to know othering and privilege. And my locks do subject me to the abuses of profiling and assumption. I've been treated more poorly than you'd like to know just because of my hair. And it's important for me to attend to these very raw ways of knowing what it feels like when violence is so often based on looks, on the way that looks can make people fear. But looks are just what we believe they are. There are others who, because of the way I look, believe I am righteous, worthy of respect. But of course, whether mistreated or honored because of my locks, no one knows really anything about me. So, what can we know? We're sort of sure we know what we feel. We think we know when we see, but knowing is just so contingent upon.
Constant threat of the unknown. We hoard duct tape and gas masks. We speak of the nearby deli mart as if it could be the next high-profile terror target. But eventually, like the rest of the country, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base realizes the impossibility of every day at threat level orange. We awake from paranoid dreams, shaking the sleep of the security state from our eyes. Fear, anger, and hatred subliminate into a fierce brand of fuck you patriotism, a nervous antipathy, skittish and held close to the chest. These colors don't run. The tattoo's back on. The entrance. The cursory pat down, the threshold of the metal detector, and a half-hearted enclosure of orange plastic fencing. A skinny airman tells me he needs my pocket knife. It's summer, so his sleeves are rolled up, and there's a noticeable gap between bicep and blouse. He has none of the bravado of most junior enlisted, only the look of a man who's wholly underwhelmed by his job. I tell him, come on, man, I just got off work. I ain't gonna stab no one. Sorry, rules are rules. I walk out of eyesight, crouch low, and drive the knife, blade first, into the dirt next to a weather-beaten no trespassing sign. Inside. The green grass scrubbed brown by the passage of foot and season. Waves of people fold into each other in patriotic currents, roiling eddies of red, white, and blue. Mostly drunk, mostly sunburned, all with an exuberant irascibility. Everyone's on edge and ready for a fight. A rowdy mix of Vietnam ball caps, suspenders, denim cutoffs, and dusty flip-flops. Flabby arms akimbo on broad hips. Country music pumps over the loudspeaker as the crowd folds in on itself. Night. Phosphorescent flowers rip the sky with neon blooms. White-hot willows with long burning tendrils. The report crackles along with thunderous applause. The fireworks have ended, and now there's a frustrated milling of the people. We jockey for position. Fights break out as the intoxicated crowd floods the exit. The air is like sulfur, like saltpeter. Two men circle each other in a drunken stupor, shoulders rolled forward. The crowd eggs them on. Give him hell, kick his ass, hit him harder. A man stumbles by, pressing a white t-shirt against his bloodied brow. A fender bender clots the exodus. The military police direct traffic as cars idle bumper to bumper. The woman next to me hangs her leg out the car window, the back of her knee folded against the black rubber trim. A purple scar follows her ankle. She fishes out a soft pack, pulling the cigarette between thumb and forefinger as she smokes. I watch from my truck and thinking about the day that this city changed. Miss Myers rolled a black TV into the classroom, and we watched as the second tower collapsed. Bankers fell like raindrops from 100 stories up. Not 100 feet from the cop, blue-inked arms slap a steering wheel. The driver runs his hands through his hair, puffs his cheek, and arches his back against the seat. Glancing sideways, he checks the rearview mirror before pulling out a tall boy from a white foam cooler. He cracks the top, watching as the police direct traffic as he sips. Heat radiates from the tarmac. The police wave me on.
We weren't always like this. It was hard for you and I. We're not simply opposites like many say. We approach living, breathing, and loving in very different ways. We started off together, but our paths quickly diverged as you went one way and I went another. They tried to force us, push us, place us together. They'd say you're sisters, be friends, and like one another. They don't understand. They don't know. Growing up crazy is what I like to call it. It's a chaos. What to liken it to? Imagine a balloon filled with hope and possibility, but with each choice they make, it deflates and spins out of control. The worst part? Well, you don't get a choice. You're just a child. A helpless soul along for the ride. It leaves you struggling to find stability in a rush of dizziness and confusion, a feeling that rarely leaves you. It lingers within you, even after time and with distance. Years have passed, and now there are miles in between, but it's still there. People see you, and they just assume you have an I don't give a fuck attitude. And I like to believe I do, but I'm a pleaser. And you're right, it's often at a consequence to me. But I keep doing it anyway, because it's the only way I know how to be. Between the two of us, you're like the lion. Like a lion backed into a corner, you bite and bite hard. They did always call you the lion, remember? And me? Well, I've always been deeply envious in your confidence of living. Being a hard worker, a doer, a fixer, those are my masks. They're my protection and distraction, even here today. Come here. Come a little closer. Come sit with me. It's going to be all right. You know it always is. Put your head in my lap and just talk to me. Your small and frail arms would tremble as you gripped my legs. You'd whisper, I'm scared. Your crying was hard and deep. The tears streamed down your cheeks. We'd climb into bed and put the covers over our heads as they screamed at each other. Was it the drink, a woman, the army? It didn't matter. I knew when the sun came up, it would all be over. You know, I didn't see it coming. I was tucked into my four-poster bed. I was prepared to rest, but not for your call. Your voice was almost a whisper. The words, I enlisted, left your lips, and my heart started to tremble. Where was the floor? Where was the ceiling? The room was spinning. How would I protect you? How would I know you were safe? You were too little, too young, too naive. First one letter arrived, and then there was another. You see this entire stack? I saved them all.
Your voice was changing. Your language was different. Did I still know you? Did the smell of vodka still remind you of her? The days turned into weeks and then into months, and when I saw you, I barely recognized you. There were no words. You looked so different, so much older, and I was scared you didn't need me anymore. Would we ever make a blanket fort again? Would we ever keep each other awake till the early morning hours? You know, I knew it would happen, but I didn't see it this way. Who was he? An Army Ranger with the Airborne Division? You said he was just a friend. But we both knew that wasn't true. December 1st came, and now you share his surname. You were there, and I was here. Who was he? Where was he? Training, you would say. Iraq once, Afghanistan twice. What's Iraq? What's Afghanistan? What does the Middle East mean? 9/11, the war on terror? Now North Africa, or maybe Syria, you say? You know, it's strange watching a life repeat itself. Right before your eyes, the same paths are taken. The same wise choices are selected, and the same mistakes, too. There's an eeriness that washes over you when you are the witness. I know when it happened, but I can't think about it now. You were destined for it, they say. That it's so curious. It's left undefined and empty for me to fill in. With what? Another event from their lives? You know, each time it happened, there was a hard-boiled egg. This was her way, and now it's mine. Tucked into my four-poster bed, I carefully peel away the shell. Will you be okay? Will you be safe? Another tour, you say. Well, I guess that's okay. I'll be here, and you'll be there. And me? Well, I'll just be eating one hard-boiled egg, one after another.
Walking down an impossibly narrow staircase into the basement of my parents' house in Buffalo, New York, the first thing that'll catch your eye is a row of industrial Singer pedal sewing machines to your left, and a large workbench for cutting fabric to your right. Above the waist-high workbench is a corkboard where client measurements, pictures of grandchildren, prayer cards, and business cards are tacked up in no real order. But if you look hard enough, you'll find one Christmas card. That well-worn Christmas card originally had snowflakes made of glitter, but they've fallen off over the last 27 years. The card simply reads, "To Sam and Fam, Merry Christmas, O.J. Simpson." O.J. Simpson was a family friend in the way that I never met him, but he knew my name. My father was a tailor who ran his own shop in Buffalo, New York, and being that football players have a tough time buying off the rack at your local menswear store, my father became the unofficial official tailor for the Buffalo Bills. The only name from that professional team in the 1970s that might resonate with the general public would be O.J. Simpson, who my father made suits for through his playing days in Buffalo throughout the 70s, had broadcasting and acting career in the 80s, and right about until June of 1994. For the uninitiated, that's when O.J. killed 2 people, allegedly. You may remember the chase in the White Bronco, the trial, the acquittal, the civil suit, or O.J.'s lackluster search for the real killers in subsequent years. My memory of those events include an immutable commentary track, courtesy of his tailor, my father. I remember during the trial, I'd hear my father exclaim, "I made him that one," when the channel turned to Court TV, signaling that one of Dad's suits was being seen by millions. We couldn't really figure out how to monetize the publicity, though. I remember making the joke to my father that he should put a sign in the window of his old shop, "Grinaldi and Sons Limited, the preferred clothier of celebrity murderers." Dad turned to me in a flippant but still direct tone said, "What? He didn't do it." "Dad! Of course he did! Have you been watching?" "No, he didn't. He's a nice guy. He can never do those things." Apparently he could, and he did. OJ's a psycho. You have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know him. I've talked to him. He didn't do it. Just because you've talked to someone doesn't make them innocent. His blood was at the crime scene. He's a really nice guy. He always asked about you guys. You remember that picture he signed for you? As the trial progressed, I watched my father dismiss DNA evidence by saying, "They screw that stuff up all the time." I heard him say his hands were all screwed up from football. He couldn't hold a knife. And the piece de resistance. They say he beat her before, but she was happy when I met her. When OJ was found not guilty, it was actually announced over the intercom in my high school. Walking from one class to the next, you heard echoed static and a booming voice say, "Not guilty," and switching off again. I remember dreading the inevitable "I told you alls" when that would come as soon as I got home. Dad carried a self-satisfied look when I did see him after school, and before he spoke, I mumbled, "He still did it." This marked the first prolonged disagreement that I had with my father, and remains a point of contention 20 years later. The man whose words had been canon for all of my life had a chink in the heroic dad armor for the first time. All at once he was stubborn, unwilling to listen, and now I had to take all of his perspectives with a grain of salt. The disagreements come a lot easier now. He's retired, works out of the basement, parrots conservative talk radio, dismisses academia as heaven for liberals. But I think back to that stupid trial, that stupid murderer, those stupid suits, and that stupid Christmas card hanging over my father's workbench as a reminder of the time I stopped believing everything he said and I saw him as dead wrong.
Hindsight is rather illuminating. I've learned a lot about myself in my travels through the retrospect, observing how moments in the once present past come to bear on a now present future can illuminate a life's trajectory in fascinating ways. Moments that often seem so inconsequential when they happened are revealed to be rather prophetic. Let me take you through one such confluence of moments. In November of 2006, my home state of Wisconsin placed an initiative on the general election ballot. The famed Question 1 asked whether the state constitution should be amended to define marriage as between one man and one woman. At the time, I was a 19-year-old college sophomore, a chemistry major, in the fourth year of a 4-year relationship with my high school girlfriend, and I had just finished a summer-long mission trip where I preached the good news of Jesus Christ to unsuspecting vacationers on the beaches of South Carolina. That Justin, my past self, believed that homosexuality was sinful, and Wisconsin's ballot initiative provided him a chance to do something about America's growing gay problem. So, in November of 2006, I strolled into my polling place to vote for my very first time. Excitement pulsed through my body as I made my way through the line. Once I reached the intake desk, a kindly older woman pushed me a paper ballot and directed me to a cramped booth surrounded with makeshift curtains. A small desk with an absurdly short, dull pencil greeted me, and I placed my ballot down to steel my nerves. Moments before, I was sure that I would vote in favor of limiting marriage. I would fulfill my religious duty and score some sanctimony points in the process. My stomach fluttered in anticipation as I picked up the tiny pencil, maneuvered my hands to Question 1 on the ballot, took a deep breath, and voted against the ban. Later that night, I sat comfortably at my Bible study in a cramped but cozy dorm room surrounded by my closest friends. As I watched two guys play wrestle with each other, I smiled and hugged my knees to my chest, apprehensive of getting involved, but grateful for the camaraderie. We settled down, and I was surprised as our conversation began with my Bible study leader asking how we had voted on the marriage amendment. As I listened to my peers, my friends, explain why they agreed that marriage should be between opposite-sex persons, my heart began to flutter. I don't know why I voted the way I did. How could I explain the feeling that washed over me in that tiny voting booth, filling me with an unfamiliar certitude? How could I describe the fire that ignited in my chest the moment when I committed myself to a decision that seemed so wrong, just as it seemed so unequivocally right? When it was my turn to answer for my vote, I heard my shaky voice pronounce, I voted against the ban. Confusion and disappointment radiated out from my leaders, upperclassmen whom I deeply admired and whose approval I desperately craved. My eyes burned a hole in the floor as I weathered their righteous reputations. I was embarrassed, yes, but I was not ashamed. That night, some seed of conviction took root deep within me. It would take years to sprout, but it was strengthened by this winter that failed to freeze it. Serendipity is a funny thing. I like to think that in the moment of my vote, the cosmos aligned and inspired me to save my now present queer self from the humiliation of having actively impeded my own human rights. I don't know if I actually believe this to be true, but I do know that it does not matter. The 10 years that separate me from that person I used to be have brought with them some tumultuous experiences. My abandonment of the church, my liberal indoctrination, my coming out, and a number of interactions, both good and bad, that have cultivated my now present identity. 3 summers ago, my mom called me, a week before her birthday, excited about her early birthday present. Confused, I asked what she was talking about. I hadn't sent it yet. But she was referring to the decision of the district court to overturn Wisconsin's ill-fated ban, removing the constitutional barrier to her son's ability to marry the man he might someday love. I laughed with her on the phone, and my mind traveled back to the once present past and how it had come to bear on the now present future, clarifying my life's trajectory in fascinating ways. Hindsight is rather illuminating.
We always listened to radio. He would get me this smart radio, which was a smaller version of the one he had. Even though he is illiterate, he is fluent in French. So he would listen to, that's what he listened to, Radio France Internationale. The news was always the same. And it seemed, despite its significance, far away and impactful. Radios carry the good and the bad. Listening to radios is like watching the news. The more you listen to it, the more you hear about violence and death. I remember waking up that day, washing up, praying, and turning on my BBC Arabic to listen to the 6 a.m. news. That was when I heard about what happened. Planes crashed in New York, the terrorists. All of a sudden, my slow world is moving faster and faster. Papa, أنت سمعت اللي خلق الأمريكيين? Dad, did you hear what happened to the Americans? He says no. Pulls out his radio, and for the next days we compare stories. Despite the importance of 9/11 and its catastrophic consequences, the destruction of Iraq being the most visible to us, I mistakenly thought that its impact would stop there. This was the case until I came to the United States. As a Muslim living in post-9/11 America, one has to live up to the expectations of being a good Muslim. If others are proud of being from different religious backgrounds, you are always doubtful if you should be proud of your own. Remembering what happened always brings up haunting feelings of shame, a feeling of shame that accompanies you everywhere. You remember how you come from a place where people still think that 9/11 was justified, that it was right to kill those innocent civilians. In thinking about it all, you realize that violence is being done to you. You always question yourself whether you should be open about your religious beliefs with your students. How would they look at me? Would their views towards me change? Would they give me bad evals because I am different? So talking about your religious beliefs becomes like this terribly designed quantitative experiment. You tell this class, but not the other. Those feelings are confirmed when you read your students' papers and find out that the views they have toward Muslims. Muslims, one of them said, are guilty until they prove themselves to be otherwise. Memories are selective. Some experiences of pain are deemed more important than others. In some ways, memories are like news broadcasts. They too are selective. You choose the right stories, those deemed worthy. You focus on those whose pain is deemed important. This is how stories get told. Some stories get told and others are forgotten. Memories function the same way. Some stories are deemed worthy to remember, while others are forgotten or ignored. Those are the things that radios teach those who listen to them. When I started J School, CNN was 6 years old. The whole 24-hour news cycle was new and not particularly pressing to me. People still read the paper then, and those of us in print journalism must have believed at least some of them always would. The bigger issue was USA Today, with its gaudy color photos and 12-inch stories. Was this where newspapers were headed? Jesus, God, we hope not. My first job was as a sports writer at the Daily in my hometown. It was an afternoon paper through the week, so those of us in sports usually worked a split shift. Cover a game in the evening, and be back in the office by 5 a.m. to lay out the section. In the mornings, the newsroom was full of sound. Phones ringing, reporters talking, the AP photo printer clicking out black and white photos. By 11 in the morning, you could hear the press run beginning 2 floors below in the basement. At night, though, it was mostly quiet. After the stringers wrote their game stories and left, there were never more than a few of us around. Usually me and a photographer and whoever got stuck covering city council that night. Sometimes I'd hang out in the darkroom with the photographer while she ran her film. Every once in a while I'd have to process film myself, and the complete darkness of that room always struck me. With no other voice to orient me, everything became a matter of touch. I had to feel for the church key on the counter to open the film canister. Then I had to fumble for the metal spool until I got the film connected to it. Leaving the dark room felt like stepping out of a cave into the daylight. Between the dark room and the newsroom, there was a little area with a light table where we would look over contact sheets or examine strips of negatives through a loupe. It was the brightest spot in the building. Once the stories were written and edited and the photos were dry, we'd take everything to the composing room, where the hum of the wax roller lay just under the voices of Marty Brenneman and Joe Nuxall calling the Reds game on the radio. The walls were lined with paste-up boards, their trays full of pica poles, blue pens, and X-Acto knives. The room smelled like hot wax and cigarette smoke, or pipe smoke if the old city editor had been in there recently. It all ran together in the daytime, but at night it really filled your senses. Back then, none of us could imagine ever doing anything else. Drinking was a big part of it. After deadline on Friday and Saturday nights, we'd go to Teeny's, a bar so dubbed for the manager my friend Henson was a little in love with. We'd drink until closing, and then buy a six-pack for the road, and go back to Henson's attic apartment, which we called the Garret, and listen to Tom Waits until 5 or 6 in the morning. During the week, we'd go to the Royal. It was 7 or 8 blocks from the office, and after a few pitchers of beer, we'd walk back in the small town, middle of the night dark. We'd talk about what writers we'd want to read again for the first time if we could. Sometimes Henson would fall asleep on the couch in the back warehouse room where they kept the pallets of Sunday flyers. There was nowhere else to sleep, so I just paced up the Agate page at 3 in the morning, still pretty drunk. Eventually, I moved to a bigger city and a bigger newsroom, and it was mostly the same for a while. But already things were beginning to change. One day I came to work, and the whole art department was gone. Then the axe hit the newsroom. I never got fired, but I finally had to go. I started my life in newspapers in an edifice, literally, in a solid brick building that felt like it had been standing for a century or more. 17 years later, I ended that life in a suburban office park, where everything felt makeshift and disposable. There was no smell of hot wax or smoke, no light tables or dark rooms, no wire machine clicking out the photos. Sometimes in the evenings, if the sports guys were around, you could still hear Marty and Joe calling the Reds game, but the satellite radio signal cleared up all the static. It was Joe's last season. He died in November. It was my last season too, though I'd go back in a minute if I could believe there was anything left of the thing I fell in love with at the beginning.
Darkness still envelops the small, rectangular space. Suddenly, the door to my room, my borrowed home for the past 3 months, allows a ray of fluorescent light to abruptly enter. In broken English, a male voice yells, "We won!" I'm startled, disoriented. Another male voice follows behind, explaining 4 more years. What? I reply, bewildered. I roll over and glance at the clock. It's 11 p.m. at home, still Tuesday night. Ding! My phone sounds, alerting me of a new message. I look down at the small screen of my borrowed cell phone. From American Libby, the screen reads. Can you believe these Germans? It's not their election, it's ours. The words we and ours circle through my head. I feel the simultaneous tug of both insider and outsider as I reconcile my strong connection to both my home country and my borrowed one. Torn between 2 worlds, ripped from the pages of my life history. Okamoto, my last name reads on my visa application, but ethnicity? I'm part German, I'm quick to tell those around me. My grandmother's last name was Brandenburg, as if in some way trying to justify my place in this foreign country. Oh, like the gate? Someone asks. No, Brandenburg, I say, struggling to emphasize the difference between my matriarchal lineage and the Prussian vestige. Whose history? 9 Fuß! I nervously pluck my headphones out of my ears as I see a middle-aged woman barreling towards me from the front of the bus. She approaches me, swatting my foot from the seat in front of me. I'm puzzled. I feel invaded, shamed, humiliated. I've disrespected my host country. Again, I feel as if I'm living in a borrowed space, on borrowed time. Southern Germany, those Schwäbisch, I recall hearing. As one German magazine reads, the real difference between Germans isn't between East and West. It's between North and South. Indeed, had the Allies split up Germany between North and South after World War II, the wall might very well still be standing. My friend, a native of northern Germany, and I are out for an early morning walk in a southern German village. We pass by an elderly man sweeping his porch. We pass by again, retracing our route, and he's now polishing his porch gnome. Typical, my northern friend bluntly states. I consider again, we and our. Whose space? Today, election day, she wears noisy red, white, and blue tights adorned with tiny American flags. This is a big day, Libby tells me. Her eyes are wide in anticipation. For me, there's nothing particularly unusual about this Tuesday. It's not unlike any other weekday. Why did you vote for that guy? Her German flatmate inquires. I'm from the South, Libby quips. She is from the South. The South is not the North. Only red versus blue. No purple. 332 to 206, the final tally read. Each of our home states reflects the antithesis of our vote. Ironic. As much as she's tried to conceal her political affiliations, Libby is now exposed. She says she feels as if her red is showing. Borrowed time, borrowed space. All of her fellow roommates have been up all night watching the election results roll in on the large projection screen. They seem as invested, if not more, than we are. Our future depends on this, they gravely state. Whose interests? Any question for our American friends, the teacher asks. A sea of hands rises in front of me. Why do you only have 2 people to vote for? Who did you vote for? Are you happy Obama was elected? I recall filling out my absentee ballot, but it now seems to be a vague memory. I begin to question myself. Am I happy? This event, which to me feels so far removed and distant, occupies a central role in the lives of the students in this 10th grade English class. A young man lingers behind me. He gives me an emphatic high five. You're awesome, he tells me. Whose election is it?
My mother is an 80s girl. I mention this because it is key to understanding a significant portion of my personality. Mom came of age in the era of big hair, leg warmers, and as she would put it, real dance music. Now, she was also incredibly reluctant to let go of said music, So while my peers were all jamming out to NSYNC or Spice Girls, I was still putting George Michael, Billy Idol, and of course, Michael Jackson on repeat. In fact, one of my earliest childhood memories is actually watching my mother bust out an impromptu tap dance solo to a vinyl copy of Rebel Yell. But the King of Pop will always occupy a place in our household that no other artist ever could. Now, I know Jackson ignites controversial opinions in many people, but to me, he was a childhood hero, an inspiration. Thriller was the first album I ever actually purchased for myself. And so many of today's popular performing artists, Adam Levine, Lady Gaga, Kanye West, Justin Timberlake, Bruno Mars, I could go on and on. They all cite Michael Jackson's syncopated beats and slick performances as a major artistic influence. The effect he had on music, in fact, is timeless. The self-styled Peter Pan, of course, was not. There are certain points in life that stand as cleavages. They divide everything around them into a before and an after. One of my top 5 is the death of the king. Michael Jackson died on June 25th, 2009. That's 21 days after I graduated from high school, 49 days before I would pack up my belongings and leave my childhood home for good. Now, I have an excellent relationship with my parents, but I made it quite clear when I left their house that I wouldn't be returning to my sleepy hometown again. That town in central Pennsylvania was notorious for being a black hole with a central gravity system that seemed to suck in even those teens most desperate to escape. So if generations of conservative family members didn't keep you there, certainly cheap tuition at the local college would. Maybe you just discover once out in the broader world that you didn't have what it took to keep you there without the presence of those familiar bodies that had kept you in orbit for so many years. I became one of the lucky ones. Went to a bigger state school near the city, and I didn't move back into my parents' house. Not the next summer, not ever again after that. My old bedroom lost its dizzying pastiche of narcissistic memorabilia and morphed into my mother's home office. None of those changes struck me with quite the same impact as Michael's death. You assume your pop culture icons will always be there. You never know how an absence will impact you until it occurs. I heard that 31 million people tuned in to watch Michael Jackson's televised memorial service. Somehow, despite that kind of magnitude, it still feels so personal, so intimate. Jackson's death affected me just as much or maybe more than the death of a grandfather when I was 12 years old. When my childhood hero died at that moment in that house, a distinct phase of my life ended also. I felt 18 years of shared history become a fixed point in the past. I don't regret my choice to leave home without looking back, but maybe if I could reach back, I would advise my past self to hold on to childhood just a little tighter. Once you let go, you cannot get it back. How ironic that it took the death of a man notorious for clinging too tightly to childhood to prove that to me. Adulthood will come soon enough, I would say. Your childhood heroes can't live forever. You will feel the sting of rejection and heartbreak. You will discover you are not straight, you are not an extrovert, you hate beer, and yes, even on the 18th try, you will still be allergic to marijuana. You'll wish to run back to that childhood bedroom amongst all of those photos, all those collage dance posters, and hide for just the next 10 minutes. When I got to college, I discovered that not everyone shared my abiding passion for Michael, and no amount of insistent arguing would ever seem to change their minds. That was okay. My unsupported fondness for 80s power ballads kept me linked to home and my mom amidst the whirlwind that constituted that first year away. And if I learned nothing else from Michael Jackson, I learned that sometimes when those hard times come, all you can do amidst that trauma and that despair is just listen to the music and dance.
Almost 20 years, and certainly many pounds ago, I finally arrived to Medellin City. It was already dark, and I was exhausted, but couldn't wait to share all the stories of the trip with my family. A gold medal and the satisfaction of having beat Brazil in the final of the South American Water Polo Championship of 1997. As the bus arrived, I jumped out and decided to walk back home cutting through a path near to the river, which each step I took, the smells and flavors of the beef stew my mom had promised to cook at my return seemed to be closer. That piece of sobrebarriga meat so tender that you could cut it with a spoon, that was for me the flavor of home, and I was eager to get there. I kept walking until suddenly I felt the cold metal tube of a gun against my head. My body just froze. So no balloons, no music, no welcome parade. This was the way my city received me after winning the gold medal for my country. A cold metal tube of a gun, a reality check. It's no secret that in Colombia, poverty and insecurity levels are high and that violence has become somehow normalized to an extent that even radio shows began by sending greetings to people kidnapped in the jungle, to an extent that death, forced disappearance, and forced displacement became just numbers in statistics that nobody reads, to an extent that half of the country still follow the shadow of Uribe to say no to hope. April of 1997 was not only the month of the first international gold medal in the history of Colombian water polo, but it also marked the creation of the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, AUC in Spanish, a coalition of paramilitary groups with an army of 20,000 members to fight violence with more violence. Colombia is such a country of magic realism, indeed. I mean, even Netflix can recognize that. No wonder we got a peace novel without peace and a literature novel prize while people do not read, and television soap operas revealing more truths than the news. But foremost, armed actors in Colombia have acted historically as linguists, adding new words and meanings to our semiotic resources. Terms like corte de corbata, the Colombian necktie, pesca milagrosa, miracle fishing, miliciano, sicario, convivir, falsos positivos, and even seguridad democrática, democratic security, are known by every Colombian whether they agree with them or not. And the AUC couldn't be left behind of the list. They coined the term limpieza social, social cleansing, to refer to their approach to the extermination of difference, but from a social perspective. Beautiful, but terrifying, no? The sad thing is that the social cleansing approach kind of made sense for a lot of people who consider it not only normal but necessary. So the state remained silent as it usually does, and half of society applauded as it usually does. AUC somos todos, we are all AUC, say the graffiti in every corner of Colombia. So in the name of the good values, the social approach of the AUC was implemented to clean the Colombian society, leaving a deep mark in towns and cities like Ciudad Bolívar, Mapiripan, San Carlos, Medellín, just to name a few. A voice from the back of my head said, "Quieto pues marica, ya sabes cómo es. Stay still, motherfucker, you know the drill." And indeed, I knew the drill, and that was precisely the point, like the Barthes Panton on a photography. This was exactly the thing that bothers me, that still bites me when I think of this memory. I knew the drill. The manual of etiquette to behave in a robbery was part of my semiotic equipment. In fact, it was normal. My body just froze at the time, not only because of fear, but also because I recognized that situation as normal, like, fuck, now is my turn. Dame la maleta pues, Piro. Give me the bag, Piro, he said, and then he had, y sabes qué, me gustan también los zapatos. And you know what, I like those shoes too. Being the victim of a robbery could make you change your mind about social cleansing, but how could I blame this guy when he was only the product of the socioeconomic conditions of the country? Maybe he was going after the clothes to exchange my pair of shoes for food or drugs or Or maybe I'm too fucking romantic, but I think even in the darkest place, there's still hope. I took off my shoes and my pants followed along with my t-shirt. And just with my underwear on me, I managed to say, hey, pero por lo menos déjame la medalla, hombre. Hey, but leave me the medal of this, man. He just laughed at me and took out the medal out of the bag and threw it to me. Ahí tenés, campeón. There you go, champ. And then he faded away by the river. Champ, I thought, yeah, sure, but champ of what? I wasn't sure anymore. I walked the rest of the way home barefoot and in my underwear. But what was naked that night was the social reality of the country. I felt the exact same way the night of October the 2nd of 2016 when Colombia walked naked, exhibiting its internal division and no acquired new meanings for Colombian citizens. Colombia was the champ indeed, but perhaps the champ of social inequalities, the champ of the absurd. The gold medal in my hand reminds me of that reality check. Today, when I think of those minutes of the robbery, I come to the same conclusion. Half of the country is crazy. How could they be so blind to support social cleansing? How can they still be so deaf to say no to other voices? When some applauded social cleansing and maybe celebrated after the no, I could never do that. I would rather keep being a romantic, a dreamer, a fool, thinking he was after the clothes, the food. I would rather keep thinking that we were not that different. We both wanted that beef stew, and Mom was cooking.